Keep talking about this bloke called Dave Rubin. So what you need to know about him is he used to be a lefty, and then he saw how crazy lefties had become, and that we sit in the world of common sense. Now, one of the things I really like about Dave, he's got a nice, clear way of speaking, but also we have something in common, which is that we're roughly the same age. We're in that Generation X that feels a little bit wedged between the traditions that we want to honour of our parents and grandparents, and of course, a full awareness of what millennials, Gen Z and everyone else wants to do. But most importantly, this guy is really good on giving advice about how we can fight. We had a chance to chat about how things started to lose their way and how you, I and Dave can put things right.
For guys like us that are, right in that middle, mid 40s, it's right in the center of the Gen X thing. When we were in school and when we were growing up, we had solved most of the problem. We really had. We didn't fully realize it, I suppose. But I think that it wasn't allowed, it wasn't okay to be a racist. It wasn't okay to be a bigot. Even on gay issues, it wasn't cool to hate gay people anymore. We had moved all through that for the people that grew up in the 80s and into the 90s and to the early 2000s. Then this very twisted, evil, woke cult, seemingly came out of nowhere about 7 years ago, although I think actually it was leading for a long time throughout, they say the long march through the institutions. So it was happening at the collegiate level really for decades. And you got to give the Marxists credit. They got into these systems and they destroyed these systems. So we may say, okay, all your ideas are bad. You're a bunch of buffoons and you're socialists and blah, blah, blah. But, give the devil his due. Look what they accomplished. So it's not just as easy to dismiss them like that. And I started finding that although I had some disagreements with some of these people on the right, and I still do, by the way, that they were very open to discussing them. They knew what they thought and why they thought it. And I found them, honestly, this was the most shocking part. I found them nicer. That really was the real shocking part because, there's this meme that somehow on the left must love tolerance, so the implication is that the people on the right are bigots and angry and it just simply is not true. Since I have gone through this metamorphosis, transition, whatever you want to call it, and now I hang out with all these scary right-wingers, they are happier, they are more generous of spirit, they smile more, they laugh more, and most importantly, they're willing to agree to disagree. So you can sit at a table, and I've done it, with 10 great thinkers, and they don't agree on everything, of course, and we can argue it out. I'm talking sitting at a table with Peterson and Douglas Murray and Ben Shapiro and all these guys, and we can do it over I like tequila, they usually like whiskey, we can do it. And guess what? We can disagree on a million things, including the nature of reality, and then we're still good to go at the end of the day. And that's very different, unfortunately, than what has happened on the left.
What I'm trying to work out is I think that in many ways, wokeness took hold because of the ultimate flaw in the Death Star of what had been built that sadly was starting to blow up, around our awakenings, is that the very openness of the people that you just spoke about, the willingness to say, hey, come be part of the conversation, meant that people took advantage of that, and they took advantage of it at every possible level, and then they ended up with the ones who were able to, essentially become the roommate who eventually kicks you out of the house.
That was a very sad realization for me to come to, actually. It was hard for me to accept what you just laid out there, but I have accepted it. I've written about it. I think it's true that unfortunately, if you were to look at your idea set as a hierarchy, right, you cannot put tolerance as the most high grand point, because if you do that, you will become tolerant of intolerance. Obviously, this is the paradox of tolerance. But this is where their endless desire for tolerance caused the wokesters to come in. So the gay rights movement, which again I think is a good movement in terms of equality, that adults should be able to make consenting decisions and be in relationships that they want. And if you don't want to be in them, or if you have a religious view, you don't have to do it, obviously. I'm not for forced gay relationships. That's a different thing. But once they said, no, that's not enough, we want more, by no stretch am I a traditional conservative. I mean, no way whatsoever. However, I do believe that I am now conservative in my ideology, in that in some ways I'm trying to conserve liberalism, but I would say in a broader sense, I'm trying to conserve the ideas of Western civilization that your country and my country and many other great nations are founded upon.
Yeah, look, if you had a look at my voting record, it would be no different than the most staunch of social conservatives, but there's certainly plenty of things that I'll disagree with many of those people, but you end up being in fellowship with a certain group of people that, I say are free thinkers or traditionalists or all of those things, because the new left is so radical, so aggressive. But how do we resist this? How do we in our personal lives and then as a movement start to get some wins here? Because it's wonderful that we can all be pissed off about this every day, but I'd like to turn pissed off into some wins, please.
Look, I truly believe that if you were to look at this, let's say from a biblical perspective or a historical perspective, I believe that David beat Goliath. I believe that story is such an innately human story that the little guy can beat the big guy against all odds. Nothing is too big to fail, actually. In an economic sense, things don't fail because we keep giving them money. But everything, Rome fell. Everything can fall. So I believe that if you fight for something earnestly and honestly, and you learn more and stay strong and make good friends along the way that you can be on this adventure with, it's like you can do anything. And I think I think my life is an example of that. And I just fundamentally believe it as a human being.
Joe Biden. This is a bloke who, of course, can, in my view, defy gravity, because the only human being I've ever seen fall up the stairs. It seems fairly obvious what should happen at the midterm elections, that there'll be a handbrake put on him. It seems fairly obvious that as a result of his policy set, he should be swept in 24. But let's talk about the elephant in the room here. We all love the bull in the china shop that is Trump. But I've got to say, I'm probably thinking that Ron DeSantis might be a better person at being able to achieve many of the things Trump wants to set out. But what's your sense about Biden?
Yeah, this is another one of those give the devil his due kind of thing, which is that Biden may be incompetent. He may have surrounded himself with ridiculous people like Kamala Harris. They may have hired all of these people because of diversity rather than skill. But these people are still here. They're still here, and don't think that they're going to give the keys to the kingdom away that easily. I said the day that Joe Biden was sworn in as president that I did not think he was going to make it to 4 years. It was very obvious the entire time during the campaign that the cognitive stuff was becoming a bigger and bigger problem. And now it's just an abject disaster, which when you talk about the mainstream media or the corporate press, they're still ignoring it. They're still ignoring it right now. And that's also one of the reasons that so many people are crazy about politics, because we can all see something. We can see something very obvious, and the media won't touch it. So our reality does not match up with, the media is supposed to be a mirror to our reality. And that disconnect, I think, is causing problems. And the real question is, of course, what happens in 24? You can already see what the media here is doing, which is that they're really afraid of DeSantis. Of course, they hate Trump and they're afraid of Trump. But now what they're trying to do with DeSantis is Trump, but he's worse because he's competent.